Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Go 24/7 podcast. My name is Bryce Koon alongside Glen West as we talk to you here on this Wednesday morning. We're recording it on Wednesday, but you might be watching this after the fact on YouTube. We appreciate if you like the video, so hit subscribe on that YouTube channel, or you're listening to it after the fact on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We appreciate that as well and keep supporting us there too. Glenn, spring football's over. Masters week is over. I'm going to throw you a softball here for the first question. How ridiculous is Scotty Scheffler and what he was able to do? It didn't look like you at Santa Maria quite the other day, but it was pretty
No.
close in my opinion.
Yeah, he's a machine. He definitely I don't think I can play with him. I don't think that would work out too well for me. Trying to keep up with Scotty Scheffler. So no, it was a great Masters. I mean, that's one of the pinnacle weeks that I always kind of set my calendar for and have it on in the background pretty much all 4 days, and
Mm-hmm.
was really a fun tournament this year too, especially to see Tiger make the cut. And no, he didn't play well the last 2 days, but to still do what he's doing at 48, 49, with all the injuries he's had is pretty special.
Yeah, no, nothing like it. It's truly nothing like it. It was a lot of fun. Scotty Scheffler's just ridiculous. But moving on to spring football, as it wrapped up on Saturday, Glenn, just kind of wanted to get your overall, maybe just quick hitter takeaways because LSU leaves spring practice. You know, Brian Kelly mentioned some things in the post game presser. We're going to talk about, potential portal stuff and kind of later on in the show. But just your confidence level, if LSU were to suit up against USC, this Saturday, how do you feel about this group and where they are, and after what you kind of saw over the past month and a half of spring football practice?
Yeah, I mean, I'd feel really good about the offense, and I'd feel not so great about the defense. And I don't think that that's any kind of breaking news. I think that's
Yeah.
very much to be expected at this point when you've brought in a whole new staff, when you've returned a lot of the same personnel from last year that really struggled on that side of the ball. You know, you've got to develop those guys, and you've got to, work in some of these newcomers as well. And I think LSU's still in a feeling out phase in that respect on the defensive side of the ball. And we'll talk a little bit more on the defense here in a minute. But I do think, probably the biggest positive takeaway you can have is, man, the first team offense was humming and
Yeah.
they look really good. I think, us was really in control in his 3 series. They go 3 touchdowns in 3 series in the spring game. But really, spring game aside, because you're not going to learn a whole ton through the spring game. Just the couple practices we got to see too. I think this is going to be a group that really is very versatile in the run. They're going to be, more versatile in what they want to do in terms of play action and implementing more 12 personnel with their tight ends and having more of those big pass catchers out on the field at the same time together. I think will really help this group as well. But for me, it really starts with the offensive line, and you can
Yeah.
just see it. Like they're the real deal. I think they're going to be probably the best, the group in certainly in the SEC and probably in the country as well. I mean, they've got 4 draft picks there, and a couple of them are going to be pretty high draft picks at this time next year. I mean, I think that they really realized that this offseason and kind of the tweaks, we kept hearing really all off season or leading into the spring that the foundation and the nucleus of this offense and what they want to accomplish won't change, but just kind of maybe how they get there will change. And I think the way that they're getting there now is they're going to lean heavily on this offensive line. They're going to lean heavily on those guys' ability to help block on the perimeter and get on the outside, in terms of the run, and certainly in the screen game and the reverses and all the short yardage routes that they've been running this off season to try to get these skills players the ball and have them make the plays up the field. I think that's a real part of this offense, and you're still going to see some of the vertical throws. I mean, certainly that's a big part of Nussmeier's game, and you saw that with the 45-yarder to Xavier Thomas. You saw it with the 60-yarder to Kyron Lacey. They're going to work those guys in for sure, and I think they have a lot of vertical threats. You throw in C.J. Daniels, Chris Hilton; those are all guys that can get downfield and make some really big plays vertically for you. So I think they have a nice balance with their run game as well, with Josh Williams, Caleb Jackson. Certainly, we'll see what Caden Durham looks like and kind of how the Trey Holly situation plays out. The latest there is that they're going to trial. It looks like in July.
Mhm.
So we'll see kind of how that plays out with his situation, but really just lots of positives you can take away from this offense. I don't when you lose a 3 first round picks, you expect to take a huge step back, and they'll probably take a step back from being the dominant number one clear cut offense in the country they were last year. But I still think this is going to be one of the best in the conference, and they're going to give teams fits.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, look, you're going to take a step back just because it's kind of ridiculous to expect this group to be as good as it was last year. That's kind of
Yeah.
video game like numbers, like you'd have to put up again. I still think they have all the tools to be a top 10 offense, and I like what you said too. Spring games are so hard. Like people love them, and I get it. And it's a chance for fans to see, and it's a chance to overreact. It's a chance to dissect and all those different things. But like when you talked about Nussmeier, like he looked really good. Obviously, everyone saw the long touchdown passes, but just one word that Brian Kelly used to describe Jaden Daniels from year 1 to year 2 was his decisiveness. And I felt like we kind of saw that out of Garrett. Confidence in where he was going with the football, hitting guys in stride on some good timing routes. And you mentioned that offense too. We talk about the receiver position. I mean, yeah, the first team unit looked good, and we really didn't mention a guy, like CJ Daniels rotated a little bit with the first team. I mean, this wide receiver room here in the spring may not have the star power that it did last year, but there's no reason it can't develop into that with the depth that they have. And I think that's something super exciting to watch. Mason Taylor as well, at the tight end position, Mac Markway kind of running that number 2 spot. Also wanted to get your thoughts on this. Saw a couple of, videos of this on social media. What'd you think about the big boys pulling and everything with Campbell getting out in space and Dellinger pulling? Because I think that's something as an offensive lineman, you like that. Like you like to pull, you like to, get up to the second level. That's something we saw within the run game. It popped Caleb Jackson for that big touchdown. It's something, a little new wrinkle, like you mentioned there. It's new, but it's still trying to get to the same goal of being an elite offense.
Yeah, I mean that's you lean into your athletic big guys up front there, and I think that's kind of the biggest point that you kind of take out of this offense, and what Kelly has said, what the number of players said, like they want to lean into that group and they want to show that they can really be a great offense because of that unit up front, and they've all played together now for multiple seasons. They've had I don't know how many starts together, some probably 30 some odd starts over the previous
Yeah.
couple of years. So like they're battle tested together. They know what it's going to take. And I think it's going to be, like you said, they probably won't be the number one offense again in the country. That's just really hard to replicate when you're losing, 3 first round picks and Daniels, Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas. But they're going to be pretty darn good because I mean we saw even a guy like you just mentioned, and Daniels was a top 5 portal receiver in the country. Coming out of Liberty, he wasn't even really getting first team reps here until the last week of spring, and I know part of that is because he's got to pick up the offense and stuff. But that's just also shows you what a lot of the work these returning players have put in as well. I think you've got some really really good options with Lacey, with Hilton, with Aaron Anderson. I think he made a couple nice grabs in the spring game as well. So like they're going to work all these guys in, and I don't know that you're going to get the 1,000-yard receiver that you had last year. I think it's going to be a little more spread out, and I think that's a very good thing for this offense because that plays into what Nussmeier likes to do, which is spread the ball around a lot.
Yeah, spread the ball around a lot. You're not focusing in on 1 or 2 guys. You had that luxury last year because you had 2 guys that are going to be selected in the first round out there. But it can be dynamic. I think that's a word. Like it can be dynamic. It can be flexible. If Kyron Lacey is getting guarded pretty well on a Saturday, you can look elsewhere, and the production's not going to drop off. That's the exciting part of what this offense can do. Defensively, though, I mean, look, we're going to talk about the defensive line here in the portal session that we're going to talk about just a tad later in the show. But secondary wise, Brian Kelly was not happy, called it unacceptable with some of the miscommunication and breakdowns. Now, Glenn, when fans heard that, and even myself, your ears perk up because that was something we heard far too often. I remember every single game, Greg Penn talking about the communication, whether it was from sideline to coach, player or sideline to player, player to player. There was a breakdown. There was a gap in communication. How concerned are you with that? Is this just part of new install, these guys learning what they want to do? Or is this something that fans should actually be concerned with heading into, that season opener in Las Vegas against USC?
Oh, I think it's absolutely a concern that you have to have for LSU's defense next year. I mean, they didn't really bring in a whole ton of new guys in terms of portal out of the secondary. I know they brought in Jair Brown. He was mostly a second, third team kind of guy this past spring. Didn't really look like he kind of was in that top grouping at least for most of the spring. So like you're banking on a lot of player development here under this new coaching staff, and it's still a work in progress. Like they only showed you cover 2 and cover 3 for the most part. They kept things very, kind of, I'll use Brian Kelly's word, vanilla. They kept things very
Yeah.
bland in the spring game. So that wasn't, it wasn't always to the benefit of the defense for that to happen. But yeah, I mean, look, I mean, the touchdown to Kyron Lacy, he had 8 yards of separation. He just ran right by Ashton Stance for a big long touchdown that was pretty uncontested. And then they had the breakdown there in the middle of the field with Xavion's touchdown as well. So like, I mean, they still got a lot of work to do on that side of the ball. I think, the I kind of felt like maybe towards the end of the spring that they had maybe penciled in a rotation that looked like it can be pretty consistent. With Ashton Stamps at the cornerback, one of the cornerback spots, Jordan Gilbert, Sage Ryan were the 2 deep safeties. Major Burns is the star. That was pretty consistent. They would been working in PJ Woodland, Jaden Toviano at that other cornerback spot. I still think that now I mean, they have a full spring's worth of data here. I think that they probably will open this up and make this a very, very competitive fall. I would expect somebody like Gilbert to still be on the field a ton next year or next fall when they return.
Mhm.
I would probably say that Major is still going to be that star guy that they're looking at. But really, I mean, outside of that, I don't know how you can not have really open level of competition at every spot, including those 2 spots that I just mentioned with Gilbert and Burns. I think you really need to see those guys just take those spots next fall when they return after a few months here, and that's going to be a real question mark, I think, for this team is can they develop in the secondary? Can they get a little bit more consistent back there with their coverage? Because they want to be aggressive. Like they want to be able to play up on guys. They want to do press man coverage. They didn't really show you a whole ton of that, I guess, in the spring game. I think they were
Yeah.
playing off a ton. But if they want to play up on guys, they've got to get a little bit better technically, and I think that's going to be a big emphasis here over the next couple months.
Yeah, and I think too, I mean, just having conversations with different media members, look, Zy Alexander's a guy that when he gets back in the fold, all the kind of things we're hearing is that he could be ahead of schedule, which is a positive sign. But this is the truth of the matter. Like Zy Alexander showed things, but the reason that fans are so excited, Glenn, for him potentially coming back is just because it hasn't been great. And Zy Alexander, with all due respect, is not an all SEC corner. I mean, you're talking about a guy that just has some experience. PJ Woodland, like the question is going to largely remain: is he playing a lot out of necessity, or is he playing a lot because he truly is that guy? I think we could go back and forth, but it's a large conversation we had about Ashton Stamps last season. During fall camp, is it out of necessity, or is it because he's that good? And so there's a little bit of maybe a gun shyness with this LSU fan base about getting too excited about some members of the secondary. I wholeheartedly agree. I think it can be an issue. I've been pretty vocal about my concern with coverage on the back end. Jordan Gilbert looks the part of a guy that could play down in the box. Can he cover? That's going to be a big question. Sage Ryan has been utilized in so many different spots. The idea of him getting comfortable in one specific spot, does that help him? You have to hope so. And then Major Burns, in a weird way, Glenn, I feel the most comfortable with Major Burns in that spot because look, we've seen him. I've talked about this. I think he's a high risk, high reward type of guy. When you eliminate the space between him and the ball, that's going to be benefit him. And putting him down to that star position allows him to be the athlete he is, allows him to be ultra aggressive and make big plays. Another guy I want to note, Kylan Jackson was one of the bright spots and a really, really nice piece, for them. Does he force his way onto the field, in the fall? You have pieces, but you just got to figure it out. And I think the biggest thing I've said is this defensive coaching staff definitely upgraded. You got better coaches. We can all agree to that. We've all seen the signs of that. The personnel grouping didn't change drastically. So it's going to be the job of this coaching staff to kind of mend the gap between where they are and where they need to be. And that's why you're seeing a lot of high profile recruits on campus that
Yeah.
guys saying, "Hey, I could come and play," because they don't have the talent where it needs to be. When you move up into the front seven, not a lot to write home about, Glenn, honestly, about Harold Perkins. I mean, that's just going to continue to be an interesting story of how effective he's going to be. Once again, pretty vanilla sets that Blake Baker was running out there. But I think the biggest thing that I was able to see, and maybe he becomes a fan favorite during the spring game, but Preston Hickey kind of lining up in that second defensive tackle spot. All due respect to Preston Hickey, walk on. I'm sure he gives them some good looks. You cannot roll into week one with that. And we know they're going to try to make some additions there. But your thoughts on this defensive line? I liked Deshaun Womack, what we saw out of him. Gabriel Relaford had some nice pieces. I'm getting to a point here. It kind of feels like Brian Kelly might have to go against what he typically does if they don't add through the portal like they want to, because some young guys are showing the ability that they could make an impact when Kelly, we know, likes to play those veteran guys maybe more often.
He likes to play the veteran guys for sure, but I also think that since he's gotten to LSU, he's shown a willingness to play freshmen if they're
Yeah.
ready. I mean, Mason Taylor is a great example of that. Certainly, Will Campbell and Emory Jones are examples of that on the offensive side. Yeah, they haven't had as much of that on defense. I mean, Perkins played some as a true freshman, and certainly all last year as well. So, I do think that there's opportunity for a lot of these guys, like you mentioned, like a Gabe Relaford to come in and maybe be a little bit ready, more ready than maybe people thought when he first got to campus. But I think that's also the really nice thing about early enrollees is that you're able to get
Mhm.
those spring months with those guys and see if maybe one or two players can't assert themselves as potential help, come fall. So, Relaford was somebody that really didn't uh, I guess, stand out during the practices, at least to me. He was with the second, third team mostly, and he really balled out in the spring game, and I think that certainly start changing the gears a little bit in Brian Kelly and the defensive staff's mind about being able to put him against an Emory Jones, against a Will Campbell. He
Yeah.
talked about getting those guys, up against Relaford come fall, and I think that'll be very important for his development. And if he's really ready to kind of help contribute in that edge rusher spot, they've I think they have really good depth there. I mean, you look at the two bookends, defensive ends. You're looking at a rotation of John Womack, Braden Swinson, Paris Shan, Savion Jones, maybe Relaford, maybe somebody else that's younger kind of steps up and can be a good piece for you as well. Like that's 4 or 5 guys that can really help you there. And then they're gonna
Yeah.
they're gonna put Harold Perkins on the edge too on third down. I mean, like he's gonna be able to pin his ears back in some situations and really try to get after the quarterback in the backfield. So I think I feel really good about just the depth they have there and the experience they have there. The big question here is going to be a defensive tackle, and it sounds like they feel pretty good about Jacoby and Guillory being one of those guys. But like you said, after him, it's just a kind of smorgasbord of just a lot of different types of guys, and they don't really seem to settle yet on any of them, and that's why you're going to see them be aggressive here over the next several weeks, in terms of adding a couple more to that room, helping Bo Davis, with the depth there, and the most constant thing I've heard about this spring portal window, leading up to it, is just how aggressive a lot of these top blue blood programs are going to be at getting defensive tackle talent. Like
Yeah.
that's probably the one position out there that is just really, really going to be competitive in terms of just trying to get guys to sign with them, and that's it's going to really test LSU staff, and hopefully you get the guys and the right fits that you want to be instant impact players, but there's going to be a lot of competition out there for a lot of these guys who I'm sure we'll start touching on here in a minute. But just to kind of round out my thoughts on the defense, I think the X factor here in the front seven is going to be Harold Perkins. It has to be, because I think he can be the one that really makes, or I don't want to say breaks, but he can be the one that certainly makes your defense tick. Even if you have some deficiencies in the second half, in the back half of the defense, if you have some holes up front that you don't get plugged this time come September, Perkins can help if he develops the right way and he becomes a player that people believe he can be at that inside
Mhm.
linebacker position. He can touch all levels of the defense with the way that he plays, and I think that's really going to be a huge key to this offseason is Blake Baker, him, and a lot of these defensive coaches getting into the room and just working hard and trying to learn that position inside and out, and really have a better understanding of what it is he wants to be doing out there.
You mentioned that it takes us right into kind of the spring portal window. Yesterday morning, it was kind of a slow trickle. No massive names entered the portal, but it doesn't mean there's not going to be quality names. Not the star power of the Walter Nolans and the guys that we saw enter during that winter portal portion. Cormani McClain did enter, and that's going to be an intriguing race to watch for a lot of teams. I'm sure you have to think LSU at least kicks the tires there, and
Yeah.
everyone kind of does their due diligence across the country. Hey, are we interested? But wanted to get your thoughts on this. Now, you mentioned Jacobian Guillory. Okay, so Guillory is one of those guys. Like, he's going to be one of those guys in the interior. You got to be able to plug it up there as well. And we kind of reported, and it's kind of been put out there now. He got an offer. CJ West out of Kent State, highly productive guy in the MAC. Was, you start to look at some of these lower level guys, Glenn, and the concern comes, can you play? Well, I was able to kind of talk to a couple people, and they said, combined with his 6'2", 315-pound frame and his dominant numbers at the MAC level, this is a perfect example of a kid cashing in on his next opportunity at the Power Five. It's what the portal is cool for, like a kid that goes under recruited, develops, does what he needs to do, and now he can go play at the Power Four level. With CJ West, there's going to be other names that Gio Paez is already a guy they have in the fold. CJ West is going to be one of those guys, but you mentioned I would say this: offensive line and defensive line are going to be two of the higher priced positions to find in the portal because it's hard to develop guys there. It's hard to develop and keep them there. Now, Brad Davis, not everyone has a Brad Davis. LSU does a pretty good job in that. But you look at it, I mean, and I mentioned the word cash in. CJ West is going to be able to do that. We're seeing the offers pour in. He had one from Texas A&M late last night. There's rumored interest that Georgia wants to get in on the mix. And you talked about there are some programs that really desperately need it. So it kind of feels like it could get into a bidding war. Now, we're not saying West is prioritizing NIL or anything like that, but it's a part of the recruiting process in the portal. Just your thoughts on maybe how much does LSU really want to get into this bidding war? How desperate are they going to be able, or how desperate are they that they're going to have to kind of get into these bidding wars? Because you have to add there. Like, I just sit and say, you cannot go into 2024, the regular season, with the current crop. You can't do that. If LSU is going to want to play with the big boys, and I know that NIL is not maybe where other programs are, A&Ms and places like that, but you still have to kind of play the game. And in the game right now is that any guy that posts really good numbers, he's going to, be a hot commodity on the transfer portal market.
Yeah, I mean, they have to be aggressive. They have to be ready to pony up whatever it takes to get a couple of these impact guys in here, because I do think it's that big of a need for this team right now. And look, I mean, you mentioned West. I mean, Philip Blitty, is that his name? Is
Yeah.
that how you pronounce it?
Philip
Yeah,
Bleedy. Yeah.
Blitty.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, he was on campus here this past weekend. He's somebody that I know you've connected with here over the last couple weeks, and he's got a family. Like, I mean, like that's something that LSU
A
is going to
wife
have
and
to
two
factor
kids.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I mean, there's real life people here that are involved in these kinds of decisions, and so, like, there's a lot of external factors here that LSU is going to have to weigh to kind of get some of these guys in, and West is certainly another option. We'll see kind of what transpires there, who they're able to kind of bring in on campus and get signed up here. But yeah, I mean, look, defensive line, defensive tackle is going to be really, really important for LSU to figure out, because they had one with Paez. I think they probably would want two more. And
Yeah.
another guy that I'm keeping an eye on is Tulane's Patrick Jenkins. I mean, he was a 2023 Bednarik Award kind of watch list guy last year. He had a really nice season at Tulane. Does he want to try to make the step up to try to get to the SEC and play and show his impact at this kind of level? That's something to watch. He hadn't entered the portal yet. I know Sonny said that Tulane's doing everything it can to kind of keep him on board there. But if he enters, LSU has got to be ready to jump at the chance there, because he is 6'2", 305 pounds. He can move. He can push push on the interior and get some good push up front. Like, he's gonna be another one of those guys that if he goes, he's gonna be right there in the mix for a lot of big programs that would like to have him. So
Yeah.
yeah, like, I think that is the biggest area of need. I don't know that it's the only area of need. I mean, I think you look at other positions on the roster a little bit. You mean, certainly cornerback with McLean entering could be a very interesting conversation to have. But the other one that I'm looking at, and one that I think is a little bit under the radar, but punter. I mean, like, they Peyton
No more
Todd.
Jay Bramblett.
Yeah, there's no more Jay Bramblett, and look, Kelly did not have a very ringing endorsement coming out of the spring game on Peyton Todd. I think they could probably maybe work in the freshman Burrell there if they really felt like they needed the help at punter. Maybe see what he's like as a punter. I know they recruited him as a field goal kicker, but you kind of do what your team needs you to do. And if Todd isn't kind of cutting it in the fall again, if he's very inconsistent, you might want to have a good backup option there available. So, if they find an extra roster spot, I could certainly see something like corner or punter, or maybe even an extra running back somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
Could be an interesting kind of deal, but you have to get two more defensive tackles in here to feel really good about, or to feel better. I shouldn't say really good. To feel better about your positioning there, and the competition that obviously will take place in the fall.
Well, hey, we always love breaking news right here on the pod. Kai
Oh,
Prian just entered the portal.
okay.
So there, let's just kind of talk about that real quick. 24/7 Sports, Matt Zenitz, Chris Hummer reporting that Kai Prian has entered the transfer portal, and then I just confirmed with someone along with that. I was typing, Glenn. I love you, man. I just, it was last time. It was Nick Saban retiring, which was an all-time great in middle of the pod breaking news. This time, Kai Prian in the portal. He has a no contact tag, which typically means he knows where he's going.
Mhm.
So that's something that's very, very interesting. I don't think they go look at receiver. It feels like that room is going to be crowded. And it also is kind of a telling sign. Look, Shelton Sampson was a name that we kind of thought, if he doesn't emerge, would he be interested? Are you surprised that Prian has now announced that he's going to enter the portal?
No.
Or has told teams? I mean, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, not a huge surprise there. I mean, he was pretty firmly in like the second, third team range. I mean, he actually had a really nice touchdown catch in the spring game from Colin Hurley to kind of close
Yeah.
out the spring game. You could see his potential there on that catch, but yeah, he was kind of buried under those top 6, 7 guys that I think LSU really wants to lean into this year. So yeah, like it wasn't surprised, just because they also kind of had a tough time defining what his role was going to be in the program last year. He started at receiver. Towards the end of the season, they tried him out at cornerback because they needed somebody back there that had some experience playing corner. So not totally surprised there. That is the first one. I think maybe just from a surprise nature, the fact that he was the first one maybe is a little bit more of the surprise. But certainly they've got to get under the 85 first, and I think this is kind of the first step of a few more that's probably likely to come. So no, not a huge surprise there. I think they're fine at receiver. I don't. You can lose too many more of those guys. I mean, I think you're all of a sudden you're looking at the 4 receivers that LSU signed in the 2023 class. I mean, all you've got left now is Shelton Sampson and Kyle Parker. So those are guys that were just on campus for a year, with Prian and Jalen Brown obviously leaving the program.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd like to keep a couple of those guys, I think, for continuity and for just development standpoint. So yeah, we'll see kind of what else transpires here, but definitely not a surprise that Prian entered, and we'll see if anybody else follows here in the next couple of days.
Yeah, breaking news as we're recording the pod, Kyprian enters the portal. And look, to stay tuned to the portal and everything, you want to head over to Go 24/7. A fantastic site for you to check out all things LSU, the best place you could go. We got great VIP content. We got some great deals running. Head over there. You can click the link down below, whether you're listening or watching, for that information. Sign up, join it, and man, we'd love to have you over there to hang out with us all throughout this spring portal window. 2 weeks open, and it's sure to be interesting to follow. And you can find myself, Glen West, and Sonny Ship over there as well. Spring football is over. Spring portal is open. Recruiting never stops. And man, we hope you stay tuned to the podcast as well. Subscribe to the channel, and we will continue to roll out content as it happens. Going to be a lot of fun. Going to be a lot of fun to cover LSU here in 2024. He's Glen West. My name's Bryce Koon. We'll catch you next time here on the Go 24/7 podcast.